A judge in a spotless black robe looks down from his bench and laughs at a homeless man in torn coats and duct-taped shoes. He calls him a parasite. He tells him to get a job. He jokes that jail will teach him how to behave. The courtroom laughs with him. The homeless man doesn't fight back. He doesn't shout. He just stares at the floor, holding a plastic bag like it's the last thing he owns in the world. The case is simple. Trespassing. One night in an empty building because the cold could kill him. But this is not a simple case, because hidden inside this boring little file is a piece of paper so old and forgotten that no one expects it to matter anymore. A paper that links the man in rags to the man in power. A paper that, once opened, will turn this courtroom upside down. The judge thinks he is judging a homeless man. He has no idea. He is about to put himself on trial. In the hallowed halls of the American justice system, they say everyone is equal beneath the eyes of the law. But anyone who spent more than 5 minutes in Municipal Court 4B knows that's a lie. Up there, behind that polished oak barrier, sits God. And down here sits the refuse, the forgotten, the ones who slipped through the cracks. Judge Harrison Sterling didn't just preside over this courtroom, he ruled it like a personal fiefdom. He was a man who valued efficiency over empathy, a former corporate shark who brought his take-no-prisoners attitude to the bench. He had a reputation, maximum fines, minimum patience, and a special kind of venom for vagrancy cases. He saw them not as human tragedies, but as unsightly stains on the city's sidewalk that needed hosing down. But on a freezing Tuesday in November, Judge Sterling was about to swing his gavel down on a case that wouldn't just challenge his worldview, it would shatter it completely. He was about to mock a man who had nothing left to lose, only to realize the man standing in rags before him was holding a mirror up to Sterling's own soul. All right, Madam Clerk, keep this assembly line moving. What's the next catastrophe on the docket?
Case number 24-CR-115A, the City versus Arthur Penhaligon. Charges are criminal trespass in the 3rd degree and loitering.
Arthur Penhaligon. To the court, he was just another statistic. Another docket number clogged the system. He smelled of damp wool and the bitter cold of the streets. He stood hunchbacked, eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor, radiating the profound shame of a man stripped of all dignity. Judge Sterling looked down over the rim of his expensive spectacles. He took in the duct-taped shoes, the trembling hands, the dirt beneath the fingernails. Sterling didn't see a man. He saw a nuisance. He saw the reason property values were down in the warehouse district. Mr. Penhaligon, is that it? You're charged with breaking into the old cannery building on Water Street, a building clearly marked no trespassing. It seems you decided to turn private property into your own personal hotel suite. How do you plead?
Your Honor, my client enters a plea of not guilty, and we would like to request—
Not guilty? Miss Jenkins, the police report says they found him curled up in a defunct industrial dryer with a can of beans. Was he just inspecting the machinery at 3 a.m.?
Your Honor, it was 12 degrees outside that night. The shelters were at capacity. Mr. Penhaligon was simply trying not to freeze to death. This is a necessity defense.
The necessity defense. It was a Hail Mary in a court like this, and Sterling hated it. He hated anything that smelled like an excuse. To him, poverty was a series of bad choices, and he was the ultimate arbiter of consequences. Oh, spare me the bleeding heart routine, counselor. We all have choices. Most of the fine citizens of this city choose to work, pay rent, and sleep in their own beds. Your client chose to vagabond his way into someone else's property. Tell me, Mr. Penhaligon, is this your career plan? Professional squatter? I see here you have priors. Loitering in 2021. Public nuisance in 2023. You're making quite a life for yourself on the taxpayer's dime. Why don't you get a job like every other responsible adult instead of leeching off society? I try, Your Honor. Nobody hires a man with no address. Nobody hires a man who looks like me.
I just wanted to be warm, sir. Just for one night.
Warm. Well, prison is warm, Mr. Penhaligon. 3 hots and a cot. Maybe a few months in county lockup will teach you some respect for property laws.
I'm getting tired of seeing your face in my
Courtroom. You people think the world owes you a living. You people. The phrase hung in the air, heavy with prejudice. Sterling was on a roll now, performing for the bailiffs, enjoying his own wit. He was the hammer, and Arthur was the nail. He was about to pass a sentence that would bury Arthur in fines he could never pay, ensuring the cycle continued. But Sarah Jenkins, the young public defender, wasn't done. She was trembling, intimidating by Sterling's aggressive style, but she was clutching a thick manila folder.
Before you sentence him, Your Honor, I insist you look at the mitigating evidence.
Mitigating evidence? For a trespass charge? What is this, his kindergarten report card showing he plays well with others?
It's his history, Your Honor. It explains why he was in that specific area, why he's on the streets at all. I had my investigator dig deep. It's all documented. Please, just look at the first few pages.
Sterling wanted to refuse. He wanted to hold Arthur in contempt and move on to his lunch break. But something in the young lawyer's desperate intensity stopped him. With an exaggerated huff of annoyance, he pulled the thick file toward him. The courtroom was silent. The only sound was the rustle of dry paper as Judge Sterling scanned the document. It was boring, boilerplate legal jargon, a foreclosure notice on a small hardware store in the sprawling suburbs, dated 18 years prior. Sterling's eyes scanned the lines mechanically. Whereas the property located at 4500 Elm Street defaulted on loan agreement, eminent domain proceedings initiated by the developers. He was about to close the file and mock the defense attorney for wasting his time with ancient history. What did an old hardware store have to do with a homeless man sleeping in a cannery today? And then he saw it. The air left the room. The fluorescent lights seemed to flicker and dim. There, stamped in indelible black ink on a document that destroyed a man's life 18 years ago, was a signature. It was aggressive, looping, confident. A signature Harrison Sterling had signed thousands of times in his previous life. Harrison J. Sterling, Esquire. Partner, Sterling, Croft and Moore. Representing Oak Haven Development Corp. No, that's impossible. The memory hit him like a physical blow. 18 years ago, he was a ruthless corporate litigator, the kind companies hired when they wanted to crush opposition, not negotiate. Oak Haven Development. They wanted to build a massive luxury retail complex. There was one holdout, a small family-owned hardware store that refused to sell. Sterling had been the lead attorney. He didn't just beat the owner in court, he annihilated him. He found loopholes in their loan agreements, aggressive zoning tactics, buried them in paper until they broke. He remembered the day the final judgment came down. He remembered the owner, a proud man in his 40s, weeping in the hallway, begging for more time, saying the store was his grandfather's legacy, saying he had nowhere else to go. Sterling had laughed then, too. He'd told the man, "Should have taken the first offer. Business is business." He'd gone out for expensive scotch afterwards to celebrate the victory, and forgot the man's face by the next morning. He looked at the name at the top of the foreclosure document. Arthur Penhaligon, owner, proprietor. The realization washed over Judge Sterling with the sickening cold of an ice bath. The man he had just mocked for not having a job. The man he had ridiculed for sleeping on the floor. The man he called a leech on society. He was the architect of that man's destruction. Sterling had swung the wrecking ball that smashed Arthur Penhaligon's life to pieces. The downward spiral, the bankruptcy, the debt, the loss of a home, the slow slide into the streets. It all started with that signature, his signature. Your Honor, have you reviewed the documents? As you can see, Mr. Penhaligon was a respected business owner until he lost everything in a very aggressive legal battle nearly 2 decades ago. He's never recovered financially or emotionally. The trauma of that event. Quiet. Just Quiet for a moment. For the first time in his career on the bench, Judge Harrison Sterling felt small. The elevated platform he sat upon suddenly felt precarious. The golden scales of justice on the wall seemed to be mocking him. He had spent years judging the wreckage at the bottom of the cliff, never once considering he was the one pushing people off the edge. He looked at Arthur's hands again. The dirt under the nails. Those weren't the hands of a lazy man. Those were the hands of a man who used to fix things, a man who used to build things, rendered useless by a system Sterling had manipulated for profit. "Why don't you get a job?" Sterling replayed his own words in his head. They sounded monstrous now. "Mr. Penhaligon." "Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry about the building. I won't go back." "Look at me, sir, please. The cannery building on Water Street. You were there because it used to be near your old neighborhood, wasn't it? Near Elm Street?" "Yes, sir. My store was right around the corner, before they tore it down for the mall. Sometimes I go back there. It helps me remember who I used to be." The admission was a dagger to Sterling's heart. He wasn't trespassing to cause trouble. He was visiting the graveyard of his own life. A graveyard Sterling had dug. The judge took a deep breath. The prosecutor, sensing a shift, stood up. "Your Honor, given the defendant's record, the people request 30 days in county jail to deter future—" "Enough. The city's request is denied. I have reviewed the file, and I have reviewed my own conscience." He looked down at Arthur, his voice softening to a level no one in that room had ever heard. "Mr. Penhaligon, this court owes you an apology. Not just for the tone I took with you earlier, which was reprehensible, but for failures that predate today by many years. Failures of the justice system. Failures of decency." "I don't understand, sir. Am I going to jail?" "No, you're not going to jail today. The charges against you are dismissed with prejudice. In the interest of justice." He bangs the gavel. "Dismissed." Sarah Jenkins lets out a breath of relief and pats Arthur on the shoulder. Arthur looks bewildered, like he's waiting for the punchline. "Ms. Jenkins, a moment of your time in chambers, please. And bailiff, ask Mr. Penhaligon if he would mind waiting a few moments as well." The courtroom cleared out, buzzing with the bizarre turn of events. Judge Maximum Sterling had let a repeat offender walk. 20 minutes later, the judge's chambers were quiet. Sterling sat behind his massive mahogany desk, stripped of his robe, just a man in a shirt and tie. Arthur Penhaligon sat in a plush leather chair opposite him, looking incredibly out of place, still clutching his plastic bag. Sterling pushed a steaming cup of coffee toward Arthur. A real cup, china, not styrofoam. "Arthur. May I call you Arthur?" "If you like, Your Honor." "You don't remember me, do you? From before?" Arthur studies the judge's face. He narrows his eyes. A slow, dawning realization spreads across his tired features. "You look familiar. You look like the lawyer, the one with the shiny shoes, the one who told the judge my grandfather's handshake deals didn't hold up against corporate contracts." His voice thick with regret. "That was me. I was that lawyer. I saw my signature in your file today, Arthur, on the foreclosure documents that put you on the street." Arthur sits back. He doesn't get angry. He just looks incredibly sad. "You were just doing your job, I suppose. Like you said in court today, business is business." "No, what I said in court today was cruel, and what I did back then, it may have been legal, but it wasn't right. I destroyed your life to help a developer buy a third vacation home. And then, today, I sat up there and mocked you for the ruin I created." Sterling reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a personal checkbook. He wrote quickly, tore out the check, and slid it across the desk. "It isn't enough. It can never be enough to replace 18 years. But it's a start. Enough for an apartment for a year. New clothes. Hot food that you don't have to eat out of a can in a freezing warehouse." Arthur looks at the check. His eyes widen slightly at the amount. He doesn't reach for it immediately. "Why are you doing this? Guilt?" "Yes, and shame. Today, Arthur, I saw myself clearly for the first time in a long time, and I hated what I saw. Please, take it." Arthur reaches out with a trembling, dirt-stained hand and takes the clean white check. He folds it carefully and puts it into his pocket inside his 3 coats. Thank you. It was a good hardware store. We helped people fix things. I know it was. Arthur stands up slowly. He looks a little taller than he did in the courtroom. You know, Your Honor, that building you helped them build on top of my store, the luxury retail center?
Yes?
It's half empty now. The roof leaks. They used cheap materials. It didn't last. My grandfather's store stood for 50 years. Arthur turned and walked out of the chambers, leaving the judge alone in the silence. Sterling walked to the window. He watched as Arthur Penhaligon stepped out of the courthouse doors and onto the street. He watched as Arthur stopped at a trash can, pulled out his old, tattered shoes, and dropped them in. Then, he pulled his coat tighter and started walking down the street, a little faster this time. Judge Sterling returned to his desk. He looked at the stack of files for the afternoon docket. More vagrants, more trespassers, more shattered lives. He picked up his gavel. It felt heavier than it had that morning. He knew he couldn't fix the world with a checkbook. He knew one act of kindness didn't erase a lifetime of ruthlessness. But as he put back on his robe and headed toward the courtroom door, Harrison Sterling knew one thing for sure. He was never going to look at a homeless case the same way again. He had looked into the abyss of the system he served, and he had finally seen his own reflection staring back.